Let's go over to our slides. We are the Office of Sponsored Projects. You've probably been already inundated with acronyms. You will further be inundated with acronyms throughout the afternoon, I might warn you. We have the primary goal for the Office of Sponsored Projects is to support the research mission, of course, of the university, both on main campuses and the branch campuses. How many branch campus personnel do we have here? Do we have anyone from the branch campuses today? Yeah, it's difficult because we have Taos, we have Gallup, we have Los Alamos, and Valencia as well, and they're not able to come onto campuses as easily as you guys walking outside of your building. We partner with each of the entities that we work with on the campus, the research, the academic community. We help in the submission, negotiations, and obtaining awards for the university. That's our primary mission. What our primary goal is to provide research active faculty and staff with timely, high-quality customer support services and to ensure compliance with all the federal, state, agency regulations. Of course, uniform guidance, I believe the FRSOs mentioned that earlier. And by the way, the FRSOs are very critical in the process. They're helpful, they're knowledgeable, they know the process, they know who to turn to. And so if you haven't used an FRSO in the past, I would suggest you contact them early because they can provide a lot of good information. We also make sure that we follow private sponsor requirements and, of course, ultimately the university policies and procedures. That's our primary. So for those of you that are new, we're going to kind of dummy it down a little bit. What is a sponsored project? Sponsored project. It's usually externally funded. It has a defined scope of work, usually some sort of deliverables, reporting requirements, something that the actual sponsor wants to see, an end product. That's primarily what we look at. We have some examples here: research, other sponsored activity, faculty, student training grants, contracts, cooperative agreements, funding, funded memorandums of understanding, and I think material transfers is another one that I don't think is listed on there. Professional services agreement. So what you're primarily looking at is funding from an outside source that requires some sort of deliverable on our end. And so that's what a sponsored project pretty much in a nutshell entails. So both Allison and Monica talked about what success is in research, and they talked about what they could do to help. Overarching picture for research in a nutshell, it takes planning, takes development, implementation, follow through, and closeout. So it's not just about searching for funding, it's not just about submitting your grant, it's about actual follow through the whole process. And many times this takes, there's a lot of bumps in this road. Planning, of course, you know your research, you know what you're looking at, you know where you want to be in your career. So you want to find funding that's going to suit your particular research. You want to be able to document that and develop that and create some sort of research project that's going to be a fundable situation, possibly for publications on your part as a researcher. For those of you who are administrative support for the researcher, Type A, these guys have a lot going on, and they're doing funding, they're doing their research, and it's important to them. It's their bread and butter, and also it's something that hits home for them. So as support, as we are in our offices, we understand that, and we want to provide the assistance needed. Implementation, of course, which would be gathering the proposal, creating it, submitting it. Okay, you're funded. So now what do we do? How do we go through that process? Follow through. Is there additional information that's going to be required by the sponsor? And closeout. Closeout is very important. For those of you who have had external funding in the past, the closeout is a very important step that sometimes is forgotten. We've finished our science, we've submitted our report to the sponsor. Now we've got to close it out. What does that mean? We'll get more information on that from contract and grant accounting, so I'll leave it at that. And of course, all that leads to an award. All that leads to funding and money and additional pluses on your CV. So how does this happen? You guys are the experts. The scientists are the experts. They're the experts in their field. We do not want to hinder that at all. That's not what we're trying to do. We are the administrative support group that helps you to be better, your project to be better. Follow the rules, follow the guidelines, follow the mandates by the sponsor. So as the UNM researcher, UNM, administrative support, the researcher at UNM, and then the sponsor, we all work together. Our office, the Office of Sponsored Projects, works directly with, of course, you guys as the UNM component, the PIs and the administrative support, but also with the sponsors. We have developed direct relationships with different agencies that we work with on a regular basis. So we have that ability to feel comfortable in calling them, contacting them, emailing them, and asking the question. No question is a dumb question. Every question is important, and whether you're a senior level person or you're a junior level person just starting out, every question is important, and it could be particularly applicable, and the response could either wave you in the positive or the negative, just depending. And this will get you to the sponsored project. So turn your idea into research. I think both Monica and Allison touched on that. How do you do that? It seems like a big process. It takes a lot of planning on the scientific side, but it takes a lot of planning on the administrative side as well. Let's go through some of these details. So, principal investigator, what does that mean? That's the key personnel on the project for the sponsor. At UNM, it means a lot of different things. So, as principal investigator, you need to be eligible in the UNM standards. You need to have either an academic appointment, a professional staff member, could be a PI as well, letter of academic title, or be a qualified grad student. Some of the students work with mentors who are already investigators, and that is how it's submitted to the agency. We need to work with the agency, we need to see the solicitation, we need to review it, read it, and understand the requirements, and then we can help you do this. So what is a principal investigator? For those of you that haven't been one or are new to this, you're responsible for all aspects of the project, both scientific, budget, compliance, all of it. You're responsible as PI. You also are responsible for adhering to the UNM policies and procedures and the sponsor policies and procedures, completing the technical requirement, which of course is the obvious one for you, and the day-to-day administration, making sure you're not overspent, making sure that you have obtained the IRB approval, Internal Review Board approval, any kind of compliance approvals, those types of things. Those are important. So as PI, that's what you're managing. It's a big role. It's completely something that it's really hard to understand, because each of the offices that are going to be speaking to you today have a piece of it. We don't see all of it. We only see a small piece of it. Our office is the pre-award, the submission of the proposal. So that's the piece we see. Proposal preparation. How is that going to happen? Okay, so we're going to go beyond the fact that you've already found an agency that you're wanting to work with. You found some possibilities for funding. You've downloaded the solicitation and read it. Okay, we're ready to apply for this. What do we need? So first of all, on our end, we want to see what you guys see. We want to see everything that you guys see. In so doing, we use a system called Cayuse. For those of you who've never used Cayuse before, it is a system that we have in-house. It documents everything, uploads the actual, we can upload solicitation, we can upload budgets, we can upload the abstract, the proposal itself, all can be entered into Cayuse. We use it for a lot of different things. We use it, of course, to build a proposal internally. We use it to track proposals and awards. So all these things are entered into Cayuse. It's a database, it's a system, it's an internet system, so it's accessible at home as well. Or if you're outside of the UNM entity, you can actually access and create your proposal and edit your proposal within the Cayuse system. Cayuse has a possibility of submitting system to system. So for those of you who are submitting to grants.gov, i.e. an example to that would be NIH, the National Institute of Health. They use the grants.gov portal for submission. Cayuse has the option to create a 424. 424 references the NIH forms, the submission forms. We can actually build the proposal, and I say we as the administrative support, And also the PI, you can build your proposal within 424, and it can be submitted through the 424 piece, which is really helpful. Makes it a lot easier. We can see it, look at it, review it all in one system, and then submit. So this is great. We also keep archives of your awards. So for those of you who are putting your CV, your bio sketches together, we have your activity tracked as we enter it into the Cayuse system. So I think that's very helpful. You can actually see your own pieces, both proposals that you've submitted in the past and those that have been awarded in the past. You can manage your projects. You can look to see where you're at, see what type of funding was successful, copy and paste if necessary. A lot of times it's difficult, I think, as researchers we have so many things going on, or as administrative support as well, there's so many things going on. What's the one place that you can look to see where your information is located, and Cayuse is that piece for us. Okay, on to the proposal submission. So here, I was talking earlier about creating the Cayuse SP. This is your record in Cayuse that is the overview of everything to do with your project. The general overview, budget summaries, key personnel that are going to be working on the project, compliance issues, those are all addressed in the Cayuse SP. We have the ability, once you've completed that piece and uploaded all your proposal, to submit in Cayuse, but what happens on your end, for those of you who are new to the system, we have the portal, you're entering your data, you route it for signature through your departments. So you're going to have you as a PI are approving, I'm ready to go. Your department administrator, if that's the case in your department, your chair, your dean, your director, whoever's in that queue, the Cayuse system enables you to do that. So you're actually able to route it. In the past, for those of you who are senior, everything was paper. So it was literally hand walked from department to department for approvals. With Cayuse, we're able to do that electronically. So it eases the burden of hand carrying documents from department to department. The PI, of course, certifies a proposal package. The department will approve it after they review, and then it'll be routed to our office for approvals. So in this piece, what we wanted to kind of talk about was, I'm talking about grants. I think that's a big piece of what we do, grants, but we also have contracts that we work with different entities, both federal, state, and private entities that we work with that require a signature from the university. So signatures could be on funded agreements, unfunded agreements, licensing agreements, data transfer agreements, material transfer agreements, confidentiality agreements, IP allocation of rights agreements. So these agreements are all things that aren't necessarily funded, but it's a precursor to the funding component. These things requires institutional signature, not PI signature. So our office can help you navigate through that process. Many times we have to negotiate these agreements. There's terms and conditions that the university cannot abide by. So we have to review. So these are also things that may not have been in your purview as to what needs to happen in the submission process. I think there's a question.
Clarification in
Yes.
terms of the negotiation for data transfer, say with PED.
Yes.
Would that fall initially on the PI, or do we need to go and talk with your office first before we go ahead and discuss any specifics?
I would suggest that any types of negotiations or contracts that you're being asked to sign should always go through our office. Okay. If it's something that, yes, indeed, we would ask that you sign, we would go to you. But normally, in most cases, the university has to sign. You as the PI can be the secondary signature saying that you acknowledge and you accept the terms as well. But it's something that we negotiate.
Right.
You just might want to clarify that's the signatory.
Yes. So and I was getting to that. So the signatory, like I said, coming to our office with the contracts is the important piece. The signatory piece, we have several individuals on campus that are responsible. We have Julian Sandoval in the financial services office. He is our boss, and he is the ultimate signatory on the restricted, funded, funding side. So we get restricted funds, he will sign. Purchasing agreements will go through Bruce, yes, yes. So that's a purchasing piece. And if it's going through the foundation will sign. So if it's truly a gift and not a restricted funded piece, it will go through the foundation. So that's why it's important, even in this kind of situation, it's just best to consult with us because we can point you in the right direction.
Okay.
So the electronic submission timeline and also the timeline for any kind of review. We usually require a 5 business day review. Agency may require the deadline to be April 1st. We need a 5 business day heads up. We need to be able to review both the CAIUS record and also the sponsor guidelines and the actual proposal as it's to be submitted to the sponsor. Those are important pieces. We have to have that because it's time consuming and we have so many things that come through our office. We need to have them in our queue, and so we need to be able to see that piece. We need to ensure that that we are able to review in a timely fashion, provide you feedback, and if updates are necessary or changes are necessary, we can work with you to get those changes. With these types of agreements that I was mentioning earlier, the unfunded agreements, we can also guide you as to whether a CAIUS record is needed. It will just depend on the situation, so I won't even go into that gory detail. But with the unfunded agreements or with any agreement that you may have that a sponsor is requiring you to sign, we need to look at it. So what we want to see are these components. These are the component pieces that we need to see for a sponsored project. We're looking at sponsor solicitation, could be called an RFP, RFQ, call for proposal, that sort of thing. Budget, the final. We want to see what the final budget is. We want to see the details of that budget and the justification. We want to see what you guys are doing. We want to make sure that the university can comply. And we also like to see the scope of work. And it doesn't have to be a long 10-page drawn-out scope of work, but it can be the overview of what you and the people who are working on the project are going to be doing, what resources you're going to be needing as well. That's important for us. And of course, compliance with conflict of interest and export control. And these are pieces of compliance and export control. You'll hear about that later on this afternoon. You'll get more details on that piece. So the review period is once submitted, 5 days prior to the submission. We'll go through it, review, ask for comments, ask for feedback, and we'll ask for changes if necessary. We'll communicate directly with the PI in some instances, and some instances we'll be dealing with a department administrator. So it just depends on what your preference is. Many times the PIs are on travel, so their department administrators handling the actual edits to budget primarily. We'll review the submissions and internal budgets against the solicitation. We'll send the comments back to you guys, and then the department or the principal investigator will send the finalized application back to us before the due date so we could submit within that timeline. So I mentioned earlier that CAIUS 424 piece, that submits directly through the grants.gov portal. So NIH is an example. Some of the other federal agencies we submit through the 424 as well. And we have more details on that. We can give you direction with that. For other electronic submissions, we need to have a 48-hour prior to allow for any issues. We had, I'm going to tell you, this in the last month we had NSF identify a date that they weren't going to be able to submit due to weather. I know that a lot of you are aware of the weather, the crazy storms that they were having on the East Coast. So we had a deadline, I believe it was like the 16th of the month. So they gave us another day because their systems were down. So those types of things happen. I mean, it's technology, yes, but we have outside issues that affect our submission process. So we need to make sure that we have your pieces from the agency, in, for instance, NSF, National Science Foundation. In Fastlane, we have to have those up and ready ahead of time so we have time to make those changes. We have time to deal with these extraneous circumstances. If it's a paper copy, and those are rare, I haven't, it's been a little while. I'm trying to think what agencies now still continue to require paper. Some of the foundations, the smaller entities will require paper submissions. Sometimes it's one copy, sometimes it's numerous copies. So we need to get that finalized to give the departments enough time to duplicate as necessary and to transmit, whether it be snail mail, hand delivering, or FedExing to the agency. So those are important. Okay, so here's our responsibilities. Of course, like I said before, we review and negotiate agreements. We need to understand in agreements what you guys are trying to accomplish. What is your ultimate goal? I'm working on a clinical trial agreement, an investigator-initiated agreement right now, and it's kind of gotten a little crazy. Normally, clinical trials are with a pharmaceutical company and with a university. Normally, it's pharmaceutical and UNM. In this situation, we're getting NIH funding from UCLA, so it's a subaward to us, and we're working with a pharmaceutical company because they're providing us the compound. So the scenario gets a little skewed when you're dealing with other circumstances, not the standard. So it's helpful for us to know the details. We've dealt with a lot of different situations, whether it be, in this situation it was psychology, it was a psychology professor, but we work with the engineers on a regular basis in their sciences and biologists. So we see a lot of different things. Travel across the country, around the world, interactions with different entities. So those types of things are important for us to see because we need to be able to facilitate that process for you. Of course, like I said, understanding the goals of the research, consider the impact of the proposed terms and conditions to the university and the PI potential subrecipients. So in the situation that I'm describing with the material transfer agreement, we're working with the federal government. It's NIH subaward from UCLA to us. So we have to make sure that we're in compliance with federal requirements. We're not just working with a pharmaceutical company. The pharmaceutical company is providing us the compound. So, you know, it's a lot of layers that we have to look through. And of course, I talked about material transfer agreements now. We also have confidential disclosure agreements or non-disclosure agreements, they're also called. So those pieces, that's usually the initial initiation. A company might come to you or an agency might come to you and say, we'd like to work on this science, we want to talk about it, we need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Those types of things need to be brought to us immediately for our review. We can help you negotiate, make sure that you aren't signing any terms and conditions that the university would not enable you to fulfill the requirements that are on the agreement. So those are important to bring to our attention as well. Processing awards is what we also do. Once you do get the funding, what happens? So NIH or NSF or whatever agency you're working with decides, okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to fund you. What happens at that point? So we actually take in the award, we document it, we prepare, make sure we have all the materials necessary to hand off to contract and grant accounting. And you'll have the Rebecca come up a little later to discuss the details of their piece, but we'll have everything we need in hand to provide to contract and grant accounting so you can have your money, so you can spend it on your project. Just in time, for those of you who work with NIH, National Institute of Health, just in time is normally required of proposals that they're considering for funding. So when you get a notice that they would like additional information, clarification, that would come in a just-in-time request. And so if that's the case, normally they're really looking at your project for funding. So that's a good thing. Just-in-time is not a bad thing. Amendments, revisions, continuations will require second year funding. All those types of things we look at. No-cost extensions as well. If you anticipate you have too much money in your project and you want to take it out another year, you'll work with our office to be able to facilitate the no-cost extension process. Early terminations, relinquishments, transfers, those things come to us as early as you can, especially with the PI transfers. I have transferred in money to the university from a PI transferring to UNM, and I've also worked with PIs transferring out of UNM to other entities. And that's a long drawn out process, so we need to start as early as you can in dealing with that. We're getting close to time. In all cases, you're going to contact our office for any types of signatures, approvals, or changes to your current agreements. Okay, quick questions. I want to just make sure that I go through the lot. On our handout that we have in your packet, we have a lot of information I think is going to be helpful, reminders to you, and we also have some great links in our handouts that I think will help as well. Are there any questions? Do you guys have any? Yes.
So for a non-disclosure agreement, about how long does it take typically to get approval?
Usually the non-disclosures are pretty straightforward.
Okay, so it's like, what, a couple of days or a week?
Yes,
Okay.
I would say normally those are like 1 or 2 pages, very simple, very straightforward. We have some standard templates that we can use, so
Okay.
if it's an agency that would like to initiate one but is not sure, we have templates that we can use. That's what we usually compare it
Okay.
to. So I would talk to your administrator as soon as possible in our office and find out. If you have one in hand,
Well,
that would be great.
we were considering, but I don't think
Yeah.
we need it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something to think about, and the timing is very
Yeah.
important. So the earlier you know about things, the best, it's best to contact us immediately.
Okay.
Because then we can guide you. We can say, okay, you have 2 months, this is kind of the timeline you need to look at, or these are the things that you need to consider before you work with that entity, those types of things. So we can help you. We have a variety of expertise in our office. So
Sounds
that's
like earlier the better.
Yes, exactly. Very good point. Anybody else? Questions?
I just wanted to point out that PI transfers within UNM between different orgs also need to go through.
Yes. So we have PIs that say are primarily based main campus, and they are moving to the Health Sciences Center, or vice versa. That's an example. We also need to know that because the money is accounted for and captured in 2 different pots, from 2 different pots.
Just for clarification too, in terms of the term transfer, does that also apply to IRB oversight? Do you have to see that, or is that just handled through IRB?
Well, the IRB office does the approvals, but the actual changes to the IRB, it's helpful for us to know about it because the agency might come to us and say, could we have your approval number? Could we have your approval documentation? And okay, we're giving them the other IRB, the older IRB, instead of, say you were working with an outside IRB
Right.
approval, and then now you get internal IRB approval. It's good for us to see both.
Or vice versa?
Or vice versa.
Wanting it to
Exactly.
go under the private?
Exactly,
Okay, all right.
exactly. Any more questions? Thank you very much. Our contact information is on the handouts as well, so I totally spaced out cards this morning, so thank you very much.